In the high desert of northern Wyoming, the wind never really stopped.
Oh yeah.
It blew across the flat land, sweeping through the sagebrush and rattling the windows of the old schoolhouse just outside the small town of Cedar Ridge. The sky was wide and pale, stretching forever in every direction. There were no tall trees, no thick forests, just open space, big sky, and silence that could make a person feel very small. This was where Emily Turner lived now. She had come here 2 years ago from Kansas, looking for a quiet life. Before that, she had lived in a busy city with her younger brother Ben. They were close. He was only 23 when he died in a car crash on a rainy night. Emily never saw it coming. One phone call changed everything. After that, the city felt too loud, too full of memories. So she left. She took a teaching job. In this faraway place, where no one knew her name and no one asked about her past, the schoolhouse was small, made of old wood and painted white. It had one big room with a wood stove in the corner, a chalkboard on the wall, and 6 desks lined up in neat rows. Every morning, Emily walked a half-mile from her little cabin to the school. She wore a long coat in winter, boots laced tight, her brown hair pulled back in a simple braid. She carried a satchel with books, lesson plans, and sometimes a piece of pie she had baked the night before. The 6 children who came to school were the sons and daughters of ranchers. They were tough kids, used to hard work and cold mornings. They helped their parents feed animals, fix fences, and drive trucks before they even turned 10. But in the classroom, they sat quietly, eyes on Emily, waiting to learn. She taught them reading, writing, and math. She also told them stories about faraway places, about oceans and mountains, about people who explored the stars. The children loved those stories. Sometimes, they would beg her to tell more. Emily liked teaching. It gave her a purpose. But outside of school, she kept to herself. She didn't go to town often. She didn't attend church or join the women's group. She cooked her meals alone, read books by the fire, and listened to the wind at night. The people of Cedar Ridge were kind, but they didn't push. They understood that some folks came to Wyoming to disappear. Then one morning, everything changed. It was a cold Monday in late September. Frost sparkled on the ground and the air was sharp. Emily had just lit the stove and was wiping the chalkboard when she heard the sound of a truck coming down the dirt road. It was old and loud, rattling like a tin can. She looked out the window and saw a big pickup pulling up near the school. It stopped and the door opened. A man stepped out. Emily had never seen anyone so tall. He had to bend down to get out of the truck. He stood straight and looked around, his eyes scanning the school, the yard, the hills beyond. He wore a worn leather jacket, jeans, and heavy boots. His hair was sun-bleached and tied back with a piece of string. His face was rough, with deep lines around his eyes and a strong jaw. He looked like a man who had spent his whole life working under the sun and wind behind him. 3 boys climbed out of the truck. The oldest looked about 12, the youngest maybe 8. They moved quickly, pulling backpacks from the bed of the truck. They didn't smile. They didn't look at each other. They just followed the man like soldiers following a captain. Emily opened the door before they reached the steps. "Good morning," she said, trying to sound calm. The man took off his hat. "Ma'am," he said. His voice was deep, slow, like distant thunder. "I'm Jesse Colton. These are my boys, Dylan, Colton, and Ethan." The boys nodded one by one. Dylan, the oldest, kept his eyes on the ground. Colton looked at Emily with a serious face. Ethan, the youngest, stared at the schoolhouse like it was a spaceship. "They'll be joining your class," Jesse said. Emily smiled. "They're welcome. We're happy to have them." Jesse nodded. "I've heard you're a good teacher. I try to be." "They need learning," he said, "and maybe they need a woman's touch too." Emily wasn't sure how to answer that. She just nodded. Jesse turned to his sons. "Behave. Listen to Miss Turner. Do your work. I'll be back Friday." Then he looked at Emily again. "Thank you, ma'am." He put his hat back on and walked to the truck. The engine roared and he drove away in a cloud of dust. Emily stood there for a moment, watching the truck disappear down the road. Then she turned to the boys. "Come on in," she said. "Let's get started." The boys followed her inside. She gave them seats near the front. Dylan sat stiffly, his hands on the desk. Colton looked around the room like he was checking for traps. Ethan kept fidgeting, tapping his foot, looking at the pictures on the wall. Emily began the lesson. She wrote spelling words on the board. She asked the children to read a short story. She moved around the room, helping where she could. But she kept glancing at the Colton boys. They were quiet, too quiet. They didn't talk to the other kids. They didn't laugh. They just did what they were told. At lunchtime, the other children ran outside to play. The Colton boys stayed inside. They sat at their desks, eating sandwiches from paper bags. Emily brought her lunch over. "Shh, you don't have to stay in," she said. "The others are playing tag." Dylan shook his head. "We don't play. Why not?" Pa says, "Work comes first," Colton said. "Play is for when chores are done." Emily sat down. "Your PA works hard, doesn't he?" "He works all the time," Ethan said. "He fixes fences, feeds the horses, checks the water lines. He doesn't sleep much." Emily felt a pang in her chest. "What about your mother?" The boys went silent. Dylan looked at his sandwich. "She died," he said. 5 years ago. Fever." Emily's voice softened. "I'm so sorry. We don't remember her much," Colton said. "Just her voice, and how she used to sing." Ethan looked up. "Pa says she was kind and strong." Emily nodded. "That sounds like a good woman." "Pa hasn't smiled since," Dylan said. "Not really." Emily didn't know what to say. She just reached out and gently touched Ethan's shoulder. The boy didn't pull away. That afternoon, she changed her lesson. Instead of math, she had the children draw pictures of their homes. Most drew ranches, dogs, horses. Colton boys drew the same thing: a big house, a barn, 3 horses, and a man standing alone by the fence. Emily looked at the drawings. They were simple, but full of care. When Friday came, Jesse returned. He stepped out of the truck just like before. This time, he waited by the door as the children poured out, laughing and shouting. Emily walked out with the Colton boys. "They did well," she said. "They're smart. They just need time." Jesse nodded. "Thank you." He looked at her for a long moment. "You're not like the others." "What do you mean?" "The last teacher quit after 2 weeks," said the boys. "We're too wild." Said this place was too lonely. "It is lonely," Emily said, "but not in a bad way." Jesse studied her face. "You're alone too, aren't you?" Emily didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Yes, but I'm not running from anything anymore." He gave a small nod. "Good. This land don't respect runners. It respects workers. Builders." "Can do that?" she said. Jesse looked at his boys. "Did you learn anything this week?" Dylan nodded. "We read a story about a boy who saved his dog." Colton said, "We learned fractions." Ethan smiled. "Miss Turner let me help her write the words on the board." Jesse's face didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A softness, flicker. "That's good," he said. He turned to Emily. "I'll see you Monday. I'll be here," she said. As the truck drove away, Emily stood on the steps of the schoolhouse, watching the dust trail fade into the distance. She thought about the boys, about their drawings, about the way Ethan had smiled when he talked about helping her, and she thought about Jesse, his size. His silence, the weight he carried like a coat no one could take off. She didn't know it. But her quiet life was changing. The wind still blew, the sky was still wide, but something in the air felt different. Someone had finally knocked on her door. Not with words of love or promises of romance, but with 3 sons, a broken home, and in need so deep, it didn't need to be spoken. And Emily, for the first time in a long time, felt like she was needed. The days passed slowly in Cedar Ridge, each one shaped by the sun and the wind. Emily kept to her routine. She woke before dawn, lit the stove in her cabin, made coffee, and walked the half-mile to the schoolhouse. The Colton boys came every morning, quiet and serious, sitting in their seats and doing their work. They still didn't play with the other children, but they no longer stayed inside at lunch. Slowly, they began to talk, short answers at first, then longer ones. Ethan asked questions. Colton shared a joke once, so sudden and unexpected that the whole class laughed. Dylan even smiled when Emily praised his handwriting. Jesse Colton came every Friday to pick them up. He always arrived in the same old truck, always got out with the same slow movement. Like a man who carried too much weight on his shoulders. He never stayed long. He would nod to Emily, say a few words to his sons, and leave. But one Friday, things were different. A storm had rolled in overnight. Snow fell hard and steady, blanketing the land in white. The roads were slick, the wind howling through the trees. Emily thought no one would come. She stayed at the school later than usual, waiting to make sure all the children got home safely. When she finally stepped outside, the cold hit her like a wall. She began the walk back to her cabin, her boots sinking into the snow. The wind bit at her face. She pulled her coat tight and moved slowly, one foot in front of the other. Halfway there, she heard the sound of a truck. It was Jesse. His pickup slid to a stop beside her. The door opened. "You shouldn't be walking." In this, he said, "I'll be fine," she said, her voice shaking from the cold. "Get in," he said. "I'll take you home." Emily hesitated, then climbed in. The cab was warm, the heater blowing hard. Jesse handed her a wool blanket. From the back seat. "Thank you," she said. He didn't answer. He just drove, his hands steady on the wheel. When they reached her cabin, he didn't leave. Instead, he got out and walked to the back of the truck. He pulled out an armful of firewood and carried it to her door. "Storm's going to last all night," he said. "You'll need this." Emily stood in the doorway. "You didn't have to do that. Someone should look after you," he said, his voice low, "just like you look after my boys." She didn't know what to say. Jesse stacked the wood neatly by the door. Then he looked at her. "Can I come in, just for a minute? To make sure the stove's working right?" Emily nodded. Inside the cabin was small but tidy. A bed in the corner. A table with 2 chairs, shelves filled with books. The stove was lit, but the room was still cold. Jesse checked the stove, adjusted the airflow, and added a log. The fire caught, and warmth began to spread. "You keep the damper too tight," he said. "Fire needs air." "I didn't know," she said. "Most folks don't," he said. He sat down at the table. Emily made coffee. She didn't ask him to stay, but she didn't ask him to go either. They sat together, drinking the weak coffee, listening to the wind howl outside. After a while, Jesse spoke. "You ever been married?" he asked. Emily shook her head. "No, I was close once, but it didn't work out." "Why not?" "He wanted a city life. I wanted. Now I'm here." Jesse nodded. "I lost my wife 5 years ago. Fever. Took her in 3 days. One morning, she was fine. 3 days later, she was gone." Emily looked at him. "That's awful," he said. "But the boys, they needed me to keep going. So I did." "You've done a good job with them." "I try. They need more than a man who fixes fences and kills rattlesnakes. They need a mother. They need a woman who can teach them how to be kind, how to care." Emily stirred her coffee. "I don't know if I can be that woman." "You already are," Jesse said. She looked up double quotes. "I watch you with them," he said. "You don't yell. You don't rush. You're patient. You sing to Ethan when he's scared. You help Colton with his reading without making him feel small. You told Dylan his essay was good, even though it had 3 spelling mistakes. You saw what mattered." Emily felt her throat tighten. "I need a wife, Emily," Jesse said, his voice steady. "Not for me, for them. They need strong sons. And strong sons need a strong home. I can't give them that alone." She stared at him. "You're asking me to marry you?" "Yes, but we don't know each other." "I know enough," he said. "I know you wake up early. I know you stay late to clean the classroom. I know you brought Ethan soup when he was sick. I know. You don't laugh much, but when you do, it's real. Marriage isn't just about doing good things," she said. "It's about love. It's about trust. Love can grow," Jesse said. "Trust too." But what I'm offering is honest. I'll work hard. I'll protect you. I'll never raise my voice in anger. And I'll stand by you no matter what." Emily stood and walked to the window. Outside, the snow fell without end. The world was white and silent. "What if I never love you?" she asked, still looking out. "Then we'll still have done right by the boys," Jesse said. "I'm not asking for a fairy tale. I'm asking for a partner. Someone to build a life with. Someone who won't leave." She turned to him. "If I say no, then I'll bring the boys to school every day. I'll keep paying for their books, and I'll never bother you again." "You're not bothering me," she said softly. Jesse stood. "I'll go now. You think about it." Put on his coat and stepped into the storm. Emily watched from the window as he loaded more wood onto the porch, then climbed into his truck and drove away. She sat by the fire for a long time. She thought about her life before her brother. The city, the noise, the grief. She thought about coming here to escape, to hide. But now, for the first time, she didn't feel hidden. She felt seen. She thought about the boys, their quiet eyes, their careful hands, the way they looked at her like she might disappear, and she thought about Jesse, his sighs, his silence, the way he carried his pain like a stone in his chest. She didn't know if she could love him, but she knew she respected him. She knew she could stand beside him. She knew she could help raise those boys. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by the fire, wrapped in the blanket he had given her, listening to the storm. The next morning, the snow had stopped. The sun rose over the hills, painting the world in gold. Emily walked to the school, as usual. The boys were waiting outside, stomping their feet to stay warm. "Good morning," she said. "Morning, Miss Turner," they said together. Inside, she started the lesson. But her mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about Jesse's words. The way he had looked at her, not with desire, but with need. Not just for himself, but for his sons. At lunch, Ethan came to her desk. "Pa was worried about you last night," he said. "He said the storm was bad. He said he hoped you were warm." Emily smiled. "I was." Thanks to him. Ethan looked up at her. "Do you like him?" Emily was surprised. "What do you mean? Do you think he's a good man?" She said, "I do." "He's sad," Ethan said. "But he tries. He makes us breakfast. He fixes our clothes. He reads to us sometimes, even though he hates reading." Emily felt something warm in her chest. "I think he needs someone too," Ethan said. Emily put a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe he does." When Friday came, Jesse arrived again. He got out of the truck, his face unreadable. Emily walked out with, "The boys, they're doing well," she said. Jesse nodded. "Thank you." He looked at her. "Have you thought about what I said?" Emily took a breath. "I have." And for the first time, she smiled at him, not just a polite smile, but a real one. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, "but I know I want to find out. With you. With them." Jesse didn't smile, but his eyes changed. They softened, like ice breaking in spring. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We've got a lot of work to do." He nodded. "We do." The boys climbed into the truck. Emily stood on the steps, watching them drive away. The wind blew, the sun shone, and for the first time in a long time, Emily Turner didn't feel alone. The news spread fast through Cedar Ridge. It always did. Within 2 days, everyone knew. Jesse Colton, the quiet giant from the Black Hills Ranch, had asked Emily Turner to marry him, and she had said yes. Some people were happy. Mrs. Garrett, the postmaster's wife, clapped her hands when she heard. "About time," she said. "That man's been raising those boys alone for years, and Emily, she's kind, smart, and strong. They'll make a good team." Not everyone agreed. At the town diner, Old Man Preston sat in his usual corner booth, sipping bitter coffee and scowling. "That girl doesn't know what she's getting into," he said. "Jesse Colton's a good worker, sure, but he's rough. A woman like Emily, She'll be buried under chores and silence. Mark my words." Others nodded. Some shook their heads. Whispers followed Emily when she came into town for supplies. She heard them too quiet. "He'll eat her up. She's just lonely." But she didn't react. She kept her head up, bought her flour and sugar, and walked back to her cabin like she hadn't heard a thing. Inside, she felt the weight of it. The doubts. The stares. The fear that maybe they were right. One evening she sat by her stove, mending a tear. In her coat, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Mrs. Ellis, the grocer's wife, holding a pie. "I brought this," the older woman said. "Apple. My best recipe." "Thank you," Emily said, stepping aside. Mrs. Ellis came in and sat. At the table, she looked around the small cabin, at the books, the quilt on the bed. The drawing Ethan had given her taped to the wall. "You've made a nice home here," she said. "It's simple," Emily said. "Simple is good," Mrs. Ellis said, "especially when you've been through hard things." Emily sat down. "People talk. Of course they do," Mrs. Ellis said. "In a town this small, a single breath becomes a storm. But you didn't ask for their opinions. You made your choice. I'm not sure it was the right one," Emily admitted. "Because of Jesse, because of everything. I don't know how to be a mother. I've never lived on a ranch. I don't know if I can love him. What if I fail?" Mrs. Ellis reached across the table and took her hand. "Love isn't always a fire, dear. Sometimes it's a slow burn. Sometimes it starts with respect, with duty, with doing what's right. The heart catches up later." Emily looked at her. "And if it doesn't? Then you've still built something real," Mrs. Ellis said. "A home, a family, safety for those boys. It's not nothing. That's everything." Emily felt tears in her eyes. She blinked them away. "Jesse's not a talker," Mrs. Ellis went on. "But he shows love in other ways. He brought you wood in the storm. He watches you with his sons. He asked you to marry him not with flowers, but with honesty. That's rare." Emily nodded. "I know." "Then trust your gut," the older woman said. "And don't let fear steal your courage." After Mrs. Ellis left, Emily sat by the window, watching the moon rise over the hills. She thought about her brother. She thought about the years she had spent running from pain. Now, for the first time, she wasn't running. She was stepping forward. The next day at school, things felt different. The Colton boys were quieter than usual. At recess, Dylan sat alone on the steps. Emily went to him. "Everything okay?" she asked. Dylan looked up. "Pa says we're moving to the main house. When you come to live with us." Emily sat beside him. "I will. But you'll still come to school, same as always." "Colton's scared," Dylan said. "Thinks you'll change everything." "I won't," Emily said. "I'll help where I can. But your PA is still your PA. And this life, your ranch, your animals, your work that won't change." Dylan looked at her. "Do you really want to marry him?" Emily took a breath. "Yes, not because I have to, because I want to. I care about him, and I care about you boys." Dylan didn't say anything for a long time. Then, softly, he said, "Ma used to sing at night when the wind was loud. Pa hasn't let anyone sing since." Emily's heart ached. "Maybe I could sing too, if you'd like." Dylan gave the smallest nod. That afternoon, Emily taught the children a simple song, "Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam." It was an Old West song, one the kids loved. When she sang, her voice was soft but clear. The children joined in. Even Colton hummed. Ethan clapped. Jesse arrived at the end of the day. He stood by the door, listening. When the song ended, he looked at Emily. There was something in his eyes, something warm, something almost like hope. "You sing?" he said. "A little," she said. "The boys like it. They do." He stepped inside. Dylan, Colton, Ethan, time to go. The boys gathered their things. As they left, Ethan turned and said, "Miss Turner, can we sing again tomorrow?" "Of course," she said. Jesse paused at the door. "Thank you," he said quietly. For the first time, Emily saw something shift in him. Not just gratitude, something deeper. The following week, Emily visited the Colton Ranch. She walked the half-mile to the big house on the hill, her heart beating fast. The ranch was wide and open fields, a barn, a corral with horses, a dog sleeping by the porch. Jesse saw her coming. He met her at the gate. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I wanted to," she said. He showed her around. Clean and well kept. The horses were calm. The house was simple wood floors, a big kitchen, a long table scarred with knife marks. "This is where we eat," he said. "This is the boys' room." He opened a door. "It's 3 beds, 3 blankets. Books on a shelf." Emily touched one of the blankets. It was worn but neatly folded. "They miss her," Jesse said. "But they don't talk about it." "Maybe they will," Emily said, "when they feel safe." He looked at her. "You make them feel safe." She didn't answer. She just nodded. That evening, Jesse cooked dinner: steak, potatoes, beans. Simple food, well made. They ate together at the table. The boys were quiet at first, but slowly they began to talk. Ethan told a story about a rabbit he saw. Colton asked Emily about the next lesson. Dylan said, "Thank you for the song." Weddle. Got the comrade. Dinner. Emily helped wash the dishes. Jesse dried. They worked side by side, not speaking, but the silence wasn't heavy. It was calm, natural, when she was ready to leave. Jesse walked her to the gate. "You fit here," he said. Emily looked at the house, the land, the stars beginning to show. "I think I do," she said. He didn't touch her, didn't say anything more. But when he looked at her, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not just need, but hope. The next morning, Emily woke with a new feeling in her chest. Not fear, not doubt, purpose. She walked to the school, greeted the children, and started the day. But when she looked out the window, she didn't just see the desert. She saw a future. A man who worked with his hands. 3 boys who needed a mother's voice. A home built not on grand words, but on quiet acts of care. And her, standing in the middle of it, ready to begin.